So Equal Education says the matric class of 2021 faced several unique challenges. Not only did the grade 12s lose more contact time due to COVID-19 lockdowns, they also had to deal with other issues, including load shedding, last-minute changes to the exam timetable, and, of course, rotational classes. The NGO is warning that if rotational learning continues, it will have far-reaching consequences for future matriculants. Let's bring in Equal Education's researcher, Elizabeth Biney, for more on the story. Elizabeth, thanks so much for joining us. It's such a big week in education, given what the matric class of 2021 has had to deal with, and we're including their grade 11 year in this discussion. It's incredible what some of them have been able to achieve.
Well, good morning and morning to your viewers. Yes, but when we are talking about achievements, you know, we are looking at the system broadly, and the education system broadly includes independent schools as well, and schools that are highly resourced, so your quintile 4 and 5, and then on the other end of the scales, we have under-resourced and sort of marginalized schools. So when we are having these discussions, we need to nuance it a little more to see what is happening in these different areas. So we don't want the discussion to be overshadowed by perhaps there will be great results coming out from the independent side that might be masking a really grave problem from the actual masses or the marginalized parts of the system that we need to pay attention to be able to improve the whole education sector holistically.
In fact, Equal Education in its press release saying the class of 2021 had a raw deal insofar as the last couple of years of their schooling is concerned. This issue of rotational learning, how do we take this discussion forward, Elizabeth? Because you talk about the more affluent schools. The truth of it is that these schools have abandoned rotational learning some time ago. They're doing Monday to Friday classes, whether it's in class or whether it's online. It's the poorer schools that are still implementing rotational learning.
Yes, and that is precisely the problem that we are facing. So the rotational system itself was supposed to be a crisis management intervention that was supposed to take us from this pandemic. You know, it was a fairly new experience and we needed something to help us to shoulder the weathers or weather the storm a little bit. But now it is becoming, it cannot be used to fix an inherently historical systematic challenge within the education system. So what happens is that going to school once or even twice in a week is not tenable, it is not sustainable because learning is not linear. So what you learn today, you need to be able to practice over and over to be able to master it and to be able to retain that knowledge. So this is the rotational timetable is actually hurting knowledge retention and directly then affects the performance that we will be able to see later on or as the years go by. So, and the difficult situation is that when learners are not in school, even when there are interventions such as online classes or, you know, all these other measures that the DBE tried to introduce to sort of alleviate some of the learning losses, those things are not they are unequally experienced because someone in the middle of like rural province, a rural village, who is supposed to now log in online to study will not have the same experience as someone sitting in like Santon having that same access to, you know, online learning, right? So learners from marginalized communities and poor and working class families were unfairly disadvantaged because they did not have enough or they do not have equal access to all these other interventions, and the experiences of learning within that system, the rotational system, harms their learning. It is going to harm their performance because we maintain that they did not get what they needed from the system and that their learning has been affected and is incomplete.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about rotational learning and its impact on knowledge retention. And Elizabeth, we're going to see the impact of this rotational timetable for many years to come, most likely. But for now, You know, can we talk about the effect it's having, particularly at the foundation phase level? Because this was an issue even before we dealt with the pandemic, the issue of reading for meaning, and that being a real problem in foundation phases in our schools. If we link these two issues, rotational learning, hurting knowledge retention, and reading for meaning, particularly in the foundation phase, it must be disastrous at the moment.
Yes, so when we looked at the numbers for last year, 2020, it was estimated that at about 75 to 100% of teaching and learning time was lost due to the pandemic, that disruptions caused by the closing of schools and the rotational timetable and right. So, and we already know that we have a historic problem with our foundation being a little bit fragile in that most of our children cannot read for meaning. We struggle in areas such as math and science. So the foundation of the system itself is really fragile. So what then is going to happen is that with this learning time, teaching and learning time being lost to rotation, we are going to pile onto that fragile system, and it's going to stand, it might collapse if we don't do something. So we need to strengthen foundation phase learning, because that is where, that is a foundation, that is the pillar of our system. And beyond that also, we need to address the other parts or the other shaky parts of our system, which is that the poor infrastructure does not create a conducive learning environment for learners to do what they need to do, for teachers to come and deliver what they need to do. We need to fund the education sector properly and well enough so that the system is able to recover, so it is not left to, rot. We need to look at proper interventions, proper plans to put in place to be able to move away from this crisis management stance that we are in to a more full recovery, sustainable teaching and learning full time, so that learners are able to recover and obviously thrive and produce the kind of results that we need to see in terms of the quality of education and performance indicators.
Yeah. Elizabeth Biney, let me thank you for your time this morning. She's a researcher at Equal Education, talking to us about a whole range of issues we're still struggling with in the education sector, and of course the class of 2021 in particular, dealing with a whole range of very unique challenges.